We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. We're talking voter registration, early voting, things like this to get the ball rolling. You just have a few weeks left, but you have time to get into it. Jeff Roberts and Joan Nixon are both with us here from the Metro Election Commission, Rutherford County, Davidson County Election Commission, but they can answer questions, obviously, in general, because much of what we're dealing with is mandated by the state, so it's the same in every county. Thanks both for coming on.
Thank you.
So what is the deadline? How much time do you have if you're not registered to be able to vote in this election?
October the 11th.
That's it. All right, so you don't have much time.
No.
Get your act together. For some reason, you are not registered to vote and you want to, and the best way to do it is just go down to your election commission and fill out the paperwork. And
you can do that. Local libraries have registration forms. The post office, you can go to our website, pull it off, our application off the website, and mail it in to us.
Okay.
This Saturday, we're having Procrastination Saturday. It's the last Saturday before the election. We've partnered with the libraries. They're open to help folks get registered, so there's plenty of opportunity to meet that deadline.
Yeah, all right, but the 11th is, so make a note if you haven't registered to make sure to do that. Let's take a call or two. We'll go to Granger. Hi, Granger.
Hi, good morning. How are you? I appreciate you taking my call.
Sure.
Listen, I called in with a question, but before I give the question, I would like to make a comment. And it's based on what you guys just talked about, the confusion about ballot measures and people and all that. I lived in Oregon for a number of years, and each election, the government would send out a voter's pamphlet. And in that voter's pamphlet, it discussed each candidate, and each candidate got to do a little statement of their positions. If it was a ballot measure, a nonpartisan group would put in a description of the ballot measure and what it would mean with a physical statement by, a neutral party. And anybody that wanted to could pay $300 and put a comment on the person or the ballot measure. And so you could sit at home, read that. Many times I could determine how to vote on a ballot measure by who was supporting it and who wasn't supporting it after I learned. And I would certainly enjoy it if Tennessee had something like that so we could get a real idea of what people, what their positions were and what these initiatives that we, very confusing what they mean, and then opinions about, who's supporting it, who doesn't. So as you work with elections, I would encourage everybody to think about encouraging something like that in Tennessee.
All right.
Thank you. And my question relates to my mother. My mother is 91 years old, and she has a residence in a senior facility. A few months ago, she broke her hip, and she's now in rehabilitation at a nursing home. She is turning 91 at the end of the month, and she probably hasn't missed an election in 70 years, especially for something important like the president. How does she vote? She is non-ambulatory for most of the time. So can I go somewhere and get an absentee ballot in her name? Her mail, if you mail something to her mail is coming temporarily to my home. So if they try to mail something, would it be cut off because it's not going to the address where, we're keeping her residence as her official address. And she's been in the nursing home probably 2 months.
Okay.
How does she vote?
Okay, thank you.
She would vote by absentee, and if you live in Davidson County, you need to contact our office in the absentee department. We'll be happy to assist your mother in making sure that she gets her ballot. If they live outside of Davidson County, you would need to contact the county of the residence of your mother. So, but just call our office, and there is a way for your mother to vote by mail. And they can explain all the instructions, all is what is required to do that process.
And the number, Granger, is up on the screen. We've kind of made a switch there. You can see the website as well. And again, there's the phone number there. If you live outside Davidson County, the same service is available where you can vote absentee.
Right.
And clearly there are things set up for folks just like her. And there are a lot of people like that can't get around.
Exactly.
And it's interesting, Granger called. I actually went to college and university, spent a lot of time in Oregon. And I was going to ask you about pamphlets or something like this, and I couldn't remember if it was Oregon or here at some point. And I know exactly what Granger was talking about sometimes you could pick these things up. And they were separate. think, I'm not sure, Granger, if it was through an election commission. Is there anything like that, if not through election commissions like yours, that I guess you these days can go online
Right.
and do your research and you can actually
Right.
find the same thing he was describing?
Right. And that's why we mail the sample ballot out.
Yeah, because then you can punch
Then you
that
can
in and
punch
search.
that in, right. And we also have Secretary of State, Division of Elections Office is also pushing out the Go Vote 10 app. You can go to Google or Apple Store to get the this application that can bring up your ballot. You can bring up where you're supposed to vote. It can bring up the times of early voting, and it does assist the voter during early voting and on election day. So that's another area that a voter can go to by
Right.
downloading that app.
Okay. And
You can actually check the your status, your address, your birth date, all those things to make sure they're correct from what we have you registered.
That's right, and
as.
it does have to be. And when we talk about registering to vote, that includes our individuals who have moved. If you've moved here from out of state, and you know how many people have moved here
Right.
recently, I mean, Nashville's boomtown, right?
Right,
And so
right.
if you've moved here from Illinois and you've lived here now, you have to go register here in Tennessee.
That is correct.
Right.
Meaning, as you've moved and you're from Illinois, you are not a registered voter here.
That's right.
So that's what we're talking about. That 11th deadline is for those folks. I mean,
Right.
you moved here.
Right.
Right.
And not just from Illinois. If you've moved from Williamson County or Wilson County
You have to
into
re-register.
Davidson County,
You have to re-register.
re-register.
Even that too.
Even
Yes.
that too.
What if you just move in a house 2 blocks over?
Nope. You just need to change your address.
Just change your address.
That's
But if you
correct.
move from county to county, then you are considered not
That's
a
correct.
registered voter there. So you are not registered. You need to go and register and get that in. And sometimes the heated stuff happens at the polling places when people show up day of
Wow.
and they want to vote, and they're told by your poll workers who are just doing their job, "No, sir or ma'am, you're not registered here," and they get mad.
Right.
Right?
That's right. That's
Right.
right.
And they can't go back to their old county to vote because they've moved physically, right?
It
Or
would
could they?
depend on when they moved.
Oh, really?
There are some provisions in the law that allows a voter, if they've come in from another county and they moved later than 30 days, then they can come back to Davidson County. They can vote early under their old address
Okay.
and then change their information after the election.
All right.
So depending on the conversation that the voter and the poll workers have would determine how to assist that voter.
Okay, but sometimes there's nothing you can do,
That is
and they're told
correct.
no. So that's a biggie. I mean, I was thinking not a lot of people aren't no, heck yeah, there's a lot of people unregistered that because they moved.
And Nick, that's another advantage of early voting. If you've moved within Davidson County, you can go to early voting not having changed your address, and all of that can happen while you
When
vote.
you do that,
If you go on election day,
You may have to vote.
you may have to go to a different precinct to actually vote. So it'll be
see.
a two-step process.
Right.
So it's better during early voting to take care of those issues.
do you still mail out those little cards, the registration cards?
Yes.
I think
Yes.
I've got one in my wallet
And
downstairs. and it tells you where.
right. It tells you where you go on election day.
Right.
It's not valid for voting, but it is for informational purposes.
Yeah, it just gives me my district, where to go, and all of
Right.
that.
Right.
And then you show up, and then they'll have my name, and
Yes.
then that's when I show my ID.
That's
Yes.
right.
That card is
Right.
not going to be a replacement for your ID. There's no photo on there.
Right.
Anyway. Yeah.
Right.
So you don't have to have the card
Okay.
to vote.
Okay.
You have to have the ID.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever
The
asked me to see
photo
the
ID.
card. They
No.
want to see my ID.
That's
is how it
correct.
goes.
It just makes it a little easier for the poll official
To
to
look
look
you
you
up.
up and if they have the
If you
card.
have it.
Oh, makes sense. All right, let's go to Brian. Hi, Brian.
Good morning, Voterville.
Hello, Brian.
Hey, it's funny about, like, you can't vote with the card, you can't vote with the ID. But I remember one time, it was about 20 or 15 years ago, when I first moved to Nashville. I think I did vote with the card.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think for some reason I left my ID in the wallet and I had to go back home. But
Yeah.
they said to go ahead and vote anyway. But I was wondering, I think that, I think there's too much, they say there's not a lot of voter fraud, but when you get one candidate, and I'm not going to talk about any specific candidate, but when you get a major presidential candidate getting 0% in a the smaller districts, what are they called, your little neighborhood
Precinct.
and he gets 0 votes, I think it's very suspicious. And you got to watch out for activity at the polls if people try to influence the vote or voting for the guy.
Well, yeah, we touched a little bit on that. First of all, by the way, you mentioned that state law was passed. What year was that? On the
2012.
2012. It wasn't that long ago on the photo. So he's right about that. At one point, just the card. Voter fraud, and I know the Secretary of State, investigates cases like that. And, we talked about the distance they have to remain away from the precinct
Yes.
if they're supporting candidates. But what else? I asked you when I first came in, can you vote more than once? Which of course you can't. But how do you prevent that kind of stuff from happening?
Well, if we have indications that a voter committed voter fraud, and we get guidance from the state coordinator of elections office, we talk through that situation, and if we have the documentation that alleges that occurred, we turn that over to our 5 commissioners. They either approve to send it to the DA's office or not, and based on the information that the staff gives them on the alleged voter fraud. The last few times we have sent that information to the DA's office, and it's in their hands, or however they dispose of that case. But we do catch the voters that do that commit. Allegedly to commit voter fraud.
And it's a felony.
It is a felony.
So does it, honestly, I think we would do stories on it every one. To think that someone, well, I'm going to try to rig the election by voting twice. I mean, it's
Right.
ridiculous. It's, but have there been every election some, to your knowledge, convictions or at least cases that have been brought to your attention?
Yes.
Every election, there's some.
Right. And in the past years, we've had successful cases being disposed for voter fraud. So previously we've had that.
Okay.
But there's a lot of checks and balances in place to prevent that. That's where Joan's saying the documentation comes from. So if you've come in once and vote, we've got documentation that you have voted. So we'll know when you come back in and want to vote again. So that's where we can then put the documentation together and
Yeah.
the decision made whether or not to prosecute.
There's just nothing more important than this. That's why these things need to be in place, and that's good. Listen, did you say we need to take a break, Mary? Yeah, let's take a break. When we come back, more of our conversation, more of our phone calls right after this. Stay with us.